Hey, this is Tarence Lauchié, and I'd like to thank you for tuning in to this podcast, The Growth Exchange. This podcast was designed to curate conversation, dialogue, and monologue around all things growth. I believe that everything living has the potential to grow into its fullest and most maximal potential. So let's grow. Hey, welcome back to another episode, another edition of this great podcast called The Growth Exchange. I'm Dr. Tarence Lauchié, excited to come to you today and talk a little bit about growth, but growth specifically by design. I've got somebody here in the studio that knows a little bit about that, and that is Mr. Attah Obande.
Hello, sir.
Hey, man, good to see you.
Likewise, man, always.
You know, what's funny to me is that we always have conversation with guests, or I have conversation with guests off air, and then when the camera starts rolling or the recorder starts recording, I just get silly.
Crickets?
No, I just get
crickets?
silly.
Okay.
No crickets. No, it's exciting, man. I get thrilled. Just one, appreciative that you would take the time to come and be a part of the conversation, because I'm on this mission now to approach life from the angle of helping things to grow.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm getting a little up there in age, and so I want to leave a mark in the earth that simply says, oh, he was all about growth.
Yep.
Or even if I don't leave the earth right now, people would say, oh, he is all about growth. And I think we connect on that. It was how many years ago?
Over 10.
Over 10 years ago.
Actually, this year marks exactly 10 years.
10 years. Let's talk about that, because you surprised me, man. You remembered, first of all. But yeah, 10 years ago, what happened?
10 years ago. So 10 years ago, I was on a plane. Actually, 10 years ago, I signed my daughters up for Camp Judah.
Right, which is a summer leadership camp that we've been a part of.
A camp that my daughters absolutely loved. And once Camp Judah stopped, I remember they would bring it up all the time.
I know.
It was big for them, but it was also big for me. So we brought my daughters for Camp Judah. It was one day I dropped the kids off, and you and I just got to talking. Mm-hmm. I have no clue what I said to you, but I clearly said something enough to you that 3 months later, I think it was in September of 15, you tweeted me, sent me a message on Twitter.
Yeah.
Saying, hey, I'm doing a conference of kingdom entrepreneurs, and I would like you to come and be a speaker at it. Yeah. And I was on a plane. I can't remember where I was now. And you wanted to talk.
Yeah.
And I came and we talked, and I ended up being a speaker at that conference in the fall, like November or something that year.
Yeah, it was definitely a connection that I probably observed your demeanor and how you watched for your children. He looked out. Family man, absolutely family man. Both you and your wife take good care of your children, and now some of them are grown adults.
Yeah.
But I noticed how well you navigated a blended family. I also noticed how serious you were about handling business. Yep. You're still very oriented to business. I think Spring GR was the common thread there, and I know quite a few people who've gone through Spring GR, but you were coordinator of that at the time. And I thought it was valuable. It was a blessing to us. We're thinking about bringing some of those Kingdom conferences back on growth, of course, hence where we are. I guess I was ahead of my time back then.
You were. Because I think not only did that moment, I think it helped with the people that were in the room. I remember that room seeing what would become Carbon Stories.
Yes.
I remember seeing what would become Maniagua,
David.
Irie Kitchen. All in that room. And this is all part of, your vision of wanting to be a part of growth.
There's more. I believe Dreamstone was in the room.
Yes.
I know that Gracewood Candles was in the room. I know that Mirror Me was in the room. All these organizations that are now moving and shaking and doing things in our community.
And it was big for me because Agua Design Group was in the room.
That's right.
And I don't know if you remember this, but the last time we talked and you interviewed me on a similar type platform.
I think it was Community Voices.
Yeah,
radio.
I mentioned to you that you were my first paid gig.
Yes, I remember that. And you said you still had the canceled check, or the.
I brought it with me.
You got it with you,
just
man.
in case you thought I was BSing.
No, I believe you. You're a man of integrity. Wow, that's all we paid you? No, back in the day.
But if you look at the memo, what does the memo say?
Empowerment speaker.
That is what I set out to be.
Yeah.
And so for me, when I saw that written as the memo, for me that was a reminder of why God initially gave me
Sure.
the vision for the company.
Really?
And so I was like, I want this check in my possession for as long as I've got this company.
Man, I'm honored. I noticed it's signed by our former board chair and treasurer, she was one of our first guests here on this podcast.
Really?
Yeah, Tanya Powell May. And it was Tillman at the time, Tanya
Yeah.
Powell May. And so she was
Wow.
the treasurer and I think chairperson at the time.
Until you pointed out, I did not know that. Tanya was also my realtor who sold us a house that we live in right now.
Likewise. She was our realtor. She sold us the house that we live in right now.
So,
it's
yeah.
amazing. I don't think it's a small world, and I don't think that things happen by coincidence. I
No.
think they happen by design, pun intended.
100%.
Pun intended, because I know design is one of your things. But you're not talking about buildings. You're not talking about physical construction as much as you are people. So let's talk a little bit about that. Let's make this conversation worth somebody listening to and want to hear it again and again.
So our design group, I started in 2013. I was kind of like at a turning point in my life. I just left the finance world. I've been called out of finance.
Given the opportunity to fly.
Yeah, somebody told me once, sometimes God will tell you stuff in private, and if you don't listen, he'll make it public. For years, he had been telling me to get out of banking. I was like, And, eventually I lost my job.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, this is my opportunity to get out. And I went through this kind of phase of trying to figure out what did I want to do with my life. And I remember reading something in that time. I was reading a lot of books that really kind of shaped my thinking at the time. And I saw that finding passion and purpose would be somewhere at the intersection of something that you absolutely love and something that just frustrates the heck out of you. And so I started asking myself that question of what was that for me. And I've, thought back to my, my banking days and my career, and some of the things I loved was pouring into my team and helping my team get from point A to point B and saying, okay, where do you want to go? How do we build a plan to get you there? And some of the things that frustrated me was wasted or untapped potential. Mm-hmm. Little did I know what that could look like, but that was kind of where our design group started. And I was like, I wanted to help people get into work that brought them fulfillment, because we read about it in scripture. Work was not a curse, right? Work was a gift. It was something that we would use to express and use our gifts.
Absolutely.
To build, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, I want to be able to help that 70% of people that they say go to jobs that they didn't like. And I felt like in order to do that, you had to be intentional. You had to be intentional with building something. And when I thought about my journey and how intentional I was with building a career, I wasn't. I wanted to just graduate high school and go to college. And when you graduate college and get a job, there was nothing. And so I wanted to help people design intentionally lives, because I said, like, what would the world look like if 90% of people went to jobs that they loved? How much more energized would they come home to be with their families? How much more good could be in the world if people were working in jobs that they loved?
I remember now also one of the other things that connected us was your faith in your absolute and unapologetic Christianity, being in business and being in finance. And I'm coming from a family of lawyers. We talked a little bit about that offline, so we'll talk about it now, because you have made transition to work in the law field. You're in the law field. But back to design, I believe that our steps are ordered. I believe that everything that we do is by design. Oftentimes we miss the opportunity to find out what that design really is, or we miss the opportunity to tap into the momentum of that design, because it's being shaped and formed around us, within us, through us every day, through connections. I think Calvin College, or at the time, or university was where you matriculated, but you decided to stay here. We'll go all the way back. Where'd you come from? Talk about that.
From Jos, Nigeria.
Jos.
Born and raised. It's a small town. It was called, our city slogan was Jos, home of peace and tourism.
Peace and tourism.
Yeah, peace and tourism.
How can you have those two at the same time?
They did it somehow. You know what I mean? But born and raised there. I was born into a family of four. I always had middle kid / little man syndrome.
Really?
I was always the little guy in the room.
But you were an athlete too, though.
I was an athlete. It was how I got my aggression out, I think. But I didn't hit 5 feet until I was like in the 10th grade.
Okay.
I think I graduated high school at 5'1", or maybe 5'3", maybe.
But you weren't done.
I wasn't done, apparently. But I came to Calvin for college. I wanted to go to a place where at least I knew a couple people. My older brother was here. There was probably like 3 or 4 other people that went to my high school that were here. And, I was a young, naive kid that came here thinking that I was going to have some sort of opportunity. And, the plan was to be in Grand Rapids for 2 years. And then I was going to transfer. I actually came here as an architecture student.
Really?
I loved architecture, went through the 2-year program at Calvin, and I started applying to University of Michigan because at the time it was the 5th best architecture school in the country. And getting ready to go off, and in that summer, I worked an internship at an architecture firm downtown, AMDG Architects. Shout out to Peter Baldwin. He was gave me a first intern that they ever had there, gave me an opportunity. And it was great. I realized that I love architecture, but I could not do it as a career.
It sounds like you already knew, I'm going to switch.
I didn't until after that internship.
Oh, really?
The internship is what made me say, you know what, this is great, but
that's
not
really
for
what
me.
it's for. Think about the internship is giving you an opportunity.
I remember telling he and I went to Detroit. We were, visiting some type of space that we were looking to bring here. This was in connection with some of the work I was doing at Spring GR at the time. And we're driving to Detroit, and I'm reminding him of the internship, and he was like, man, I think you were our first intern. And I told him, and he was like, oh man, like I feel kind of bad that I was like, but that's what an internship is for. Like,
exactly.
It's supposed to help that.
And it genuinely generates growth. It causes you to start assessing whether or not this is what you want to do for the rest of your life, or if it's not, let's move on.
And that's exactly what it did.
Yeah.
It was a free internship, but in my mind, it was priceless.
Yeah, free as in non-paid, right?
Exactly, free as in non-paid. I did not get paid.
You got residuals now.
I did. I did. I rode the bus. I rode the 6 bus. So before J-Lo, I was on the 6. Rode the 6 bus from Calvin down to downtown every day in the summer and came back.
Awesome, man. That's exciting to know that you had, even early, transitional fortitude. And the reason why I want to use that term is because by design, you think of change and you think of environmental change, and I want to try to stick with that theme of growth and development from a personal and professional perspective. Remember, we're not talking about buildings anymore. We're not talking about architecture, but you're responsible for the architecture of your family, your children, of which you're doing a great job. I've seen your kids, I know them, and I've watched them grow up. Both you and your wife do an excellent job. Yeah. What do you think some of the kingpin points are for design, architecture, and momentum for growth, for kids or adults?
Yeah. So I think, for me, like I love architecture. I love design. I ended up going into graphics design after I moved from architecture. But once I started to think about what I wanted to do, and our slogan at Agro Design Group is we build people, not buildings. And I think growth it has to be intentional. An analogy I always use for my kids all the time is, I say it's important what we pour into ourselves. And, I always say I pull out a cup and I pour some water in it. And I'm like, I poured water in this. Can I pour Coke out of it? Of course not. You can't pour Coke out of a cup you poured water in. Right. And so if I'm going to pour into you, I need to make sure I'm pouring the right things into me. And so I say the same thing to them, like, what is being poured into you? Because that's what's going to come out of you. Wow. And so, I think that as far as growth, we have to be intentional about where it is and what it is that we want to grow in. Because something is going to be poured into us. Sure. Because that's just the nature of taking in whatever, whether it's movies or podcasts or music. So how can we be intentional with what is poured into us? Because that affects our thinking. Our thinking affects our behavior. Our behavior then affects our destiny, right? So it all starts with what's being poured in intentionally. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah.
I think that's a great start. It's a good place to do a quick break. We're going to do a segment break, and when we come back, I want to pick up from there. But I want to talk a little bit more about how you've seen that principle working in your own life through your transitions of career choices and entrepreneurship, and even how the business is going, because somebody might want to contract your services. So we're going to take a quick break for sponsorship, and we will come right back. This episode is sponsored by Speak Media Services, where we believe everyone deserves the opportunity to capture and preserve their unique stories. You're not just another number in the crowd. Your individuality matters. Our intimate photography and videography services are tailored to your vision and budget, ensuring your essence shines through. Allow us to help preserve the moments that mean the most. With our support, you'll create cherished keepsakes to treasure for years to come. Speak Media Services, your story, your way. Hey, welcome back. We're in the middle of a great conversation, and even during the break, we started talking about some things that I think is worth putting on this track, as they would say, so that we can share just what growth really means. Those principles that you were sharing regarding intentionality and being conscious and aware of what's being poured in to determine what comes out, just spun a lot of things. But I was also talking about your versatility in how modern day Renaissance man, in that you understand and appreciate the arts, you understand finance and money, business and entrepreneurship, also ministry, faith and religion, family. These are all elements, I think, that makes for a well-rounded individual. But a lot of people may or may not know that you're a singer. So
I'm not a singer, but I like to sing.
There you go. There you go. You're in good company, man.
Yeah.
But you, in college, had an opportunity to do some ministry. Share that story so that our listeners can be encouraged, because we're not just talking about growth by design, but we're talking about the experiences in between.
So and I think it's interesting because some of these instances cause you to realize, like, oh, that is something that there is something is drawing me there, and so maybe I need to pour into that. And I remember watching a video with T.D. Jakes, and he was talking about his niece or something like that, and how she loved to take pictures, or she loved to like direct, and people looked at it as like her being kind of bossy, and he's like, no, that's a seed. You just have to water it the right way.
That's right.
So that it's leadership. So anyway, in college, I learned that worship was my way of clearing the antenna between me and God. And it started because a friend of mine wanted to give his testimony at an evening service.
If you want us to shout out,
BJ, Babajide Obishe-san, he actually is a doctor now in Charlotte.
Nice.
And I was actually sending the guys a text message late last night. I figured I'd wait till
so
today
when
to
they
send
watch
it.
this, they'll know that you sent a shout out.
That's right. So he wanted to give his testimony. He's Nigerian, but he wanted to have Nigerian worship music. So he felt at home when he was giving his testimony. And so he called a group of us guys that, hey, 5 or 6 of us, hey guys, like I'd like to do some African songs that are, like worship homes for us, songs that we all knew, and let's sing them. And so we got together, practiced, worked on the songs, and then we did them for his testimony. And then after the service, people were asking us if we were a group. We're like, group. We're just out here singing. And so then
a bunch of Nigerian guys just having a good time.
That's right. We were just out, Nigerian guys and one Indian guy.
Really?
Yeah. So we named him an honorary African. John Lazarus was his name. Anyway,
2 biblical names. Right?
That's right. That's right. Great guy too. So then Calvin has this international student show where people can do things from their culture as a way to kind of to show the diversity and appreciation for the different cultures. And so we sang at Rangila, and same thing, people asking us if we were a group. Then we got asked to sing at one church, and so we sang at the church, and then it turned into a lady that worked at Calvin saying like, hey, like there's other churches that would like you to sing. Like if I coordinated, would you guys sing? And so it turned into the next 2+ years, 3 years.
She signed you guys to a contract.
Pretty much.
She's your manager.
We're out. She legit was our manager. We ain't getting paid for it, but and it turned into us singing at almost a different church every weekend for the next 3 years.
That's right. That was probably part of your discipline.
Yeah.
Happening, because it's not easy, maintaining your Christian faith when you come all the way across the world.
Yeah. You got like 7 guys every Saturday morning. 7 college guys on a Saturday morning getting together to practice.
Wow.
Like
Gospel
songs.
music.
That we're not getting paid for.
Exactly.
So I mean,
God
the
was
residuals
definitely keep coming through. Yeah. I'm getting that constant. These residuals, man, of these early life experiences, all watered your growth.
At 100%.
I'm a firm believer of that. I think that I mentioned before, nothing happens by chance or happenstance, but God literally orders our steps, and He governs our way based on the experiences that we can handle
Yes.
and even the ones that we can't.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about maybe an overwhelming challenge that you overcame, some growth that might encourage somebody.
Man, I think there's so much. So, you talked about me being a speaker, and that is something that I think that, okay, it's been 12 years now since I started the business. If you had asked me that 14 years ago, I would have been like, yeah, right. Like I've never really liked being up front, and I was always terrified of it. But just thinking about the way God works, I started singing on a worship team after, I lost my mom in 2000, and I went through this like kind of depressive slump as I was grieving her. And it was in that time I realized that I was missing worship because I graduated, so I wasn't singing with the African acapella as we were called back then. And so I ended up starting to asking to sing on a worship team at Madison, the church I was going to at the time. And I started singing there. I used to just love to sing background. Like I'm not a lead. I don't have
Right.
a strong voice like
Right.
a lot of other people that I know. But I just love to sing. I love to worship. After singing for a couple of years, I was asked to lead, and I was like, "Yeah, right. I ain't singing a solo. Like I never sang solos." But then I got kind of pushed and encouraged. Like I felt like it was a situation similar to you, seeing something in me that I didn't see in myself, that people encouraged and drew out of me. So there's so many people that I can think of in my journey that did that. And so I remember the first time I was asked to sing a solo, I was terrified. I'd sang at literally, so many churches as part of a group,
right? But not a solo,
but never a solo, and I was terrified. But I did it, and I was asked to lead like worship at church, and I was like, I went through the process of putting the set together and being terrified, but and then being scared every time that I would go up on stage, and I'd close my eyes and I think people thought I was just in the spirit, but I was just terrified.
So you was in the spirit of fear, right?
Yeah, but those things challenged me to be able to. It showed me the importance of preparing, right? But I think we always have to leave room for the Holy Spirit to do what He's going to do. And I remember one time talking to a guy in my church, and he's like, "Man, like every time you lead worship, like I don't know how do you prepare? It just seems like you just." Everything is all, and I remember then that was when it really hit me, like the importance of preparation, but being able to have that flexibility to go with what comes. And I think that was so shaping for me as a speaker as well, to be able to know the importance of I need to be prepared with whatever my content is, but I also have to go and read the room and see kind of what pivots I need to make as well. So that was one that was, for me, it was a significant challenge, just kind of getting over that stage fright of being up front, having a mic, and having people listen to you.
Yeah, that seems indicative of growth. You have a challenge, you face it head on, you dive in, you come out okay on the other side. Yeah. This is a great conversation, man. I'm curious as to, back to design, the acronym that is on your website. Plus, feel free to give your information out for people. You can go ahead and make a plug real quick.
Yeah, Agro Design Group. We're a speaking, coaching, consulting firm. I'd speak on all kinds of topics from entrepreneurship to leadership to finance. People still ask me to speak on finance. Website is agodesignGroup.com.
And Ago is spelled AGO.
Just AGO. It's my initials. AGO. And then design, I wanted to keep design in it just because of the architecture side, but then also the graphics design side, right? And the intentionality of it. But then I wanted to, when I started the business, I was like, every business needs a framework. And I'm really, really big on frameworks. And so I put together the acronym to help me to think about, if somebody's going to live intentionally, what steps could they take to do that? And so the 6-step framework, the D, is to decide. As human beings, we have free will. And we are the only creatures that God created that can wake up one day and decide to be something different. Right?
Change.
You
right?
you can be an addict today and wake up tomorrow and decide you're not going to be an addict.
That's right.
So, but it starts with the decision of what is it that I want to do? What's the life I want to have? Then E is envision. You have to be able to see it. As I think about architecture, this building we're in, it was envisioned by an architect before it was ever put on paper or erected for us to be able to be in here. So you have to be able to envision and see clearly as that door needs to be 3 feet away from that door. It needs to be X, feet wide. So how do you envision where it is that you're trying to go? The next step is you have to start. You can, people envision themselves losing weight and all kinds of things, but then you never actually start, right? And if I'm using the worship leader thing, is like you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great.
Absolutely.
Right. So you have to start. The next thing is we're creatures of habit. And if you aren't intentional and you don't internalize it, you kind of fade back into what it is. So the next thing is internalize. How do you internalize this new change? There has to be consistency for it to stick around. Say it, 21 days to start a new habit?
To form a habit, right?
The G is grow. You have to grow. So if I want to be a better worship leader, how am I growing? How am I learning more about it? So I was studying other worship leaders when I wanted to become a speaker. I was watching video after video after video about speakers and how do they start? How do they craft their message? How do they end? When do they pause? Why do they pause? So I'm really, really trying to grow. And the more you grow, it further invigorates what it is you're trying to do. And then the N is nurture. When I first did it, I said it was never stop, meaning just never stop, just keep going.
Right.
But I felt like nurture was more what it was, where you're dealing with the ups and downs of what it is. So, yeah.
And design, I think, is an excellent acronym to give impetus to growth. Planning it, of course, and being determined. I love how you went through each of those letters. One of them stands out for you, though. One of them is where you are in this phase of your life. Because as I was listening to it, I was just thinking, which one am I activating and which one am I moving right now? And I always live in the envision part. But when it boils down to it, I have to go all the way back to being determined. Because I'll start something and then somehow get distracted in some kind of way. Which of those letters are you living right now?
I would definitely say grow.
Okay. Hence this conversation.
Yeah,
I know that's why you need to be a guest here. Right?
So I mean, with in all seriousness, definitely grow. As we mentioned, I pivoted career-wise 2 years ago, and now work at an immigration law firm.
Absolutely.
And so it's
which is a great fit, by the way, for you.
Yeah.
A great fit by you. I mean, you're international. You're an immigrant.
Yeah.
You're also very international family-wise.
Yes.
You can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
In English or Spanish?
Well, I wish I could do it in Spanish, but just not yet. So my wife is Mexican. But definitely in the growth phase, it's a new industry. We're a fast-growing company right now. And so there's just a lot of information to take in. So I'm just feeding myself right now and just really trying to understand the industry, the practice a little bit more, the different ratios that I need to keep in front of me in order for the business to be as successful as we want it to be and to reach the types of goals that we want and be able to support the families that we're trying to support in the work that we do. So grow is it for me right now.
That's awesome.
One of the things I said at the beginning of the year with our CEO is I really want to increase my Rolodex, if you will, of
that's dating you to use even the term Rolodex.
Like I told you before, I'm no longer the young guy anymore.
Exactly.
Man.
I guess they use them as contact lists now, right?
Yeah. So my contact list needs to increase.
Listserv was in there for a little while too. No.
But for me, I've always held as a practice to connect with experts in areas I want to grow in.
Yeah.
If I see somebody that's a great father, I don't know if you remember this. I remember asking you, I'm like, man, I look at your boys.
You're like, what's the secret?
I did. Because for me, it's like when I see somebody that's doing something great in a space that I want to grow in, I want to build a connection because I want to sit under you and learn.
Amen. I think it's the grace of God just to answer, and somebody may be asking that same question with those boys and their lives. They're all married, and I've got a daughter as well who's married. It was the grace of God, but it was also being what I didn't see.
Yeah.
We talked about that.
And being intentional.
Being intentional about it.
Yeah.
I over-parented just to make sure. But I'm glad you spotted that. That's something that I'm godly proud of is the offspring that my wife and I have, and now their offspring. One of the youngest ones started school yesterday. So,
oh wow,
isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So back to the
Yeah, so growth is a big thing for me, and so I've never been afraid. I've shared this with like a lot of my team. Like throughout my career, I find who is great in the position that I'm in. I don't care where you are, and I'll call you.
Amen.
Hey, I see
Bold.
that you're doing great things. And how are you doing that? When I was a teller, I would call the number one selling teller in the district, and I did it. Even till now, I've reached out to a couple of COOs of law firms and said, "Hey, I see you're doing great things. I'd love to connect and see how I can learn."
I appreciate you, man, for your boldness, your absolute certainty that this is where you're supposed to be in your life. The steps of the just are ordered of the Lord, and he delights in his ways.
Amen.
That's scripture, and I think that you've embraced that, you've embodied it, but you're also showing us what it means to do it through life's transitions and challenges, but also with a spirit of joy. That's one thing we can guarantee when we see Attah. We're going to see smiles, we're going to see some seriousness, but we'll also see some fun. So thank you for being who you are, man, in this community and worldwide. I can say that, but I appreciate what you contribute to this bedrock of material that I'm gathering. These podcasts are specifically set up to interview people who have gone through the growth process, going through the growth process, and can help others in the growth process, so that when we culminate all this information in this library of resources, we got topics, subjects, situations that people can relate to. So thank you, man. I don't know if you got closing words. You want to say anything? Or
I guess my closing words would just be thank you. Thank you to you. When I pulled out this check, because when we talked about this, I was like, I got to bring that check with me. So I pulled it out and I looked and I saw the date
impressed.
on it. And I saw the date on it and I was like, man, so it's 10 years this year
10
that
years.
check was written. And so I just want to say thank you to you. Yeah. Thank you for being obedient to seeing something in me and pulling it out of me. And because that check, as much as you're like, this is all we paid you, that's priceless
it was
to
a
me.
Seed, right?
That's honestly priceless to me, because that was the affirmation that I needed at that time to continue going. So I just want to say thank you to you for being obedient and seeing all the growth that has happened because of you being obedient to your calling as well.
Thanks, man. I asked one request. Would you come back to the show?
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt. Thank you. You're listening to another episode of The Growth Exchange with Attah Obande. I'm Dr. Tarence Lauchié. Glad you tuned in. Why don't you share this, like it, maybe even put on notifications so that you can see when the next episode comes out, and support all things growth. Thank you for tuning in. If you're a business or a nonprofit looking to tell your story through powerful video, you've got to check out 630 Visions. They specialize in creating high-quality cinematic content that not only looks amazing, but actually helps you grow your brand and connect with your audience. I've seen their work. It's purposeful, professional, and built around your vision. Visit 630visions.com, that's 630visions.com, to learn more and to see how they can help bring your story to life. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Growth Exchange. I'm Dr. Tarence Lauchié. It's been a pleasure to have these conversations and dialogues with our guests. If you notice, one thing we all share in common, and that is the ability, the desire, and the potential to grow and maximize our fullest potential. So keep tuning in. Share this with somebody, like it, maybe even invite somebody. And if you'd like to be a guest, contact us with the information that's here and available for you. Let's grow.